Hello, my name is Yiming Sophia Xue, and this is a spoiler review on the book The Silvered Serpents by author Roshni Chokshi, book 2 of the Gilded Wolves series. I got this advanced reader's copy from Wednesday Books for an honest review, so thank you so much, Wednesday Books and Roshni Chokshi, for this wonderful book. I loved this so much, and I have so much to say, and all of my notes are all here, as you can see. I had so much fun blowing through this. And if you haven't read The Gilded Wolves, which was the first book in the series, you should probably read the first book and then the second book, because there's things happen in the first book that you do want to know about before going into the second book. And yes, I know the book officially releases today, September 22nd, and I'm very excited. So guys, go buy your copies and read it after you finish the first book, because these are so nice. And So this is for everybody who has just finished the book and who wants to find somebody to talk about it with, and I want to find somebody to talk about it with because nobody around me reads. But for everybody who doesn't know, so the basic premise of the story from the first book is that it's kind of based off of the Tower of Babel, I believe it's pronounced. So when God destroyed the tower, he threw the Babel fragments out into the world, and where they landed, civilization sprung. Now also here, and because of this, we have this thing called forging, which is kind of like a human's power and ability to control things like matter or the mind. Like matter, like solids, liquids, and gases, or the mind. And certain people have this kind of ability. Now we have something called the Order, which is a society that protects the location of the Babel fragments, as well as the ability to forge. The first book, and in this book, we follow our group of misfits who kind of go on heists, or as they like to call it, acquisitions, to, basically steal stuff. It kind of reminds you of like the Ocean's movies, as well as, like Now You See Me. But it kind of also reads like Angels and Demons, or like the Da Vinci Code. There's so much like lore and legends and mythology, conspiracies that we don't know. And it's just cool to read. So this book kind of picks up right after where the first book ended, around like maybe a week or two in between, something like that. And we have all the characters here still dealing with the aftermath of what happened in the Gilded Wolves. Now the Silvered Serpents takes us outside of Paris and into Russia, primarily Siberia, St. Petersburg, and Moscow. So I absolutely adored the first book. I really, really loved this one too. So if you haven't read the first book, The Gilded Wolves, or the second book, The Silvered Serpents, then you should probably leave, because the next is going to be a bunch of spoilers, and you would like to know what happens yourself by reading it. And if you have read it, great. Stay, because I have so much to talk about, and I would like to hear what everybody else says too. So I'm gonna try to talk about it in order as I made the notes. So starting at part 1. With the first book, we left on a hanger, and I wanted to see more immediately, but I got to read this like a year after I finished the first one, so I had to reread a lot of The Gilded Wolves to refresh my mind about it. And we realized what a descending spiral of hell Severn is in, because we lost Tristan, and it was such a hard blow to everybody in our group. And we realized at the end that he's not the blood of House Vance. So what is he? I thought about it like halfway through the book, and then I just completely forgot about the question. Cause later, we'll talk about that later. So I marked down the character objectives from the beginning of the book. So we have Severn wanting to turn into a god and avenging Tristan so that he can protect the rest of his friends and avoid what happened to Tristan happening to them. Severn reminds me in this book of Mr. Julian Blackthorne, just based on the way he is handling everything and his fierce need to protect his family, no matter how harsh, or, from that aspect at least. And that kind of character makes for a little bit of an Icarus. And we have Layla wanting to find the divine lyrics, because if she doesn't, she's gonna die by the time she turns 19 or 20 was the age. Layla is also trying to stay away from self-destructive Severn as much as possible, in the beginning at least. Even though she has that whole thing with Severn at the end of the first book where she's like, I will be your mistress for the whole winter conclave. Ugh. Enrique just wants people to listen to him and take him seriously, which at some points in the book I was just like, why aren't they? And Zofia just wants to rely on herself, and she doesn't want to owe anybody anything or be in anybody's debt, feel like they have to take care of her. She doesn't want to be a burden on anybody, and she just wants to pay people back what she owes them. And she wants to rely on herself, self-sufficient, strong young woman. Okay, so when Enrique first talks about the bloodline being related to the lost muses, I wrote, ooh, interesting. Could Severn be descended from it, from Kahina? And I completely forgot about it for most of the book because we were led to believe Layla was. So that slipped my mind and I don't know how, and I just, I should have known, I saw it, I should have said I saw it coming, but I was distracted. We have, how do we separate Vasiliev, is that how you pronounce it, Vasiliev, from his bodyguards, said Severin. This scene cracked me up when Severin said, what's something that can pull men apart? And then Enrique says, money. Hypno says, love. And Zofia says, magnets. And they all turn to stare at her, and she just says, powerful magnets. Zofia and Enrique's banter throughout the whole book just made it so cute to watch and see them grow as two individuals through the help of each other. In the beginning, when Zofia was pretending to be a guy, Enrique pointed to, his mouth. But she's like, oh right, my lip color. It must be a genetic predisposition from my mother. It's too red. And Enrique's like, no, I was talking about your voice. But it's so cute to see him blushing and all happy with her. Can we? Layla and Severin. Layla and Severin. Layla and Severin. Important things need to be said 3 times. The first time they see each other in this book is when Severin asks everybody who wants to go with Layla and I to the ballet and steal Vasiliev's key around his neck. And nobody answers because nobody wants a part of that elephant in the room atmosphere between the two. Because even if they don't know what's going on, the tension is like, it's like palpable. Like I can physically go in there and like paw at the tension in between them, like the electrical static. Ugh. When he gives her a diamond collar to wear, she gets so upset. And she says, quote, the difference between a diamond necklace and a diamond dog collar depends on the bitch, and they both have teeth, monsieur. Yeah! I can't. The first time I read it, I like inwardly shrunk. I was so, that's such a nice line. Oh, the angst between them, the angst. The sexual tension between people who are pretending to be lovers. How many times have we seen that play out in books, movies, TVs, whatever? Anytime somebody pretends to be in a relationship with somebody else, it just ends up not being pretend any longer at some point. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. The tale as old as time. Do not pretend to be in a relationship unless you want to be in that relationship, because that's how it always turns out. Okay, anamnesis, I don't know how to pronounce this. That's some really cool lore. I've never heard of that before. Whereas babies, we knew the secrets of the world, but then the angel presses their thumb to our lips, and that's why everybody has this dent here. I didn't know that before. Also, when they were stealing the spectacles, the heating of the tin box and then dousing it with freezing water is expansion and contraction, right? Simple chemistry that, when I'm studying music, I don't think about often. And it reminded me again that I forgot everything about chemistry studying music. Because the simple chemistry just doesn't really cross my mind anymore, From early on, it foreshadows that Hypnos wasn't interested in a serious relationship with Enrique, and that kind of got me going with, they're probably gonna like break it off at the end of this. And Enrique's probably gonna go to Zofia at least. I don't know. When Severn during the meeting kicked Hypnos out because he said to Enrique that he might have deserved a spot in your bed, but not in my meeting room, I was kind of really pissed off at Severn. Like, that's really harsh. I know he's in a downward spiral, but still. And Hypnos has been nothing but helpful to you guys. I don't understand why you keep wanting to push him away. I know he was like kind of like your brother again, as you guys were raised together, like Tristan, but still. So thank God for Layla and Enrique trying to stand up for him. Harsh and uncalled for, Severin. And then Layla slams her hand into the table and there's a nail or a glass or something like that and it starts bleeding and Zofia's just like, I'll use fire to seal up the wound. I was like, it's a tiny little cut. You don't need fire unless you're hit with like an arrow or something. And so we're at part 2. I really enjoyed the matriarch in this book. She had so much more character and we see so much more screen time or book time. And we know that she cared for Severin at the end of the first book, but it was just like this book we see a lot of what happened, including her deal with Kahina? I don't know how to pronounce her name. And why she's done what she's done. She's just really trying to help them out as much as she can right now and keep Severin from knowing his true bloodline.
We get blood bending.
We get introduced to blood forging in this book, which I often like think of as blood bending because I just can't picture what's going on. It's like an affinity to control blood, right? And this thing is crazy. We didn't really know about this in the first book, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it was mentioned, but we didn't know about it much. Man, blood forging is so scary. Like, it's so powerful that it's so scary. But we'll talk about that later too. So after they get the spectacles, which is really cool because you look and then you see the door and it opens and then this whole, mansion appears. That's nice. But I'm wondering if that, like, if you don't open the door and you see the whole thing, then is it just like non-existent? Like, if you walk through that place where the mansion would be, do you just walk through it? Or because once you enter the door, you enter this secret, I'm not really sure how that works. So when we get the spectacles, we have Hypnos playing on the piano, and he's playing the music of the spheres, which is the first time I've heard about this. It's like the music of the planets and our system, which is really cool. And so they're just like, Hypnos play, and the spectacles light up, and Hypnos says, oh, does this make me irresistible to animate and inanimate things? And I lost it there. It was so funny. And the whole conversation where Layla's trying to find a pet name for him as his mistress was just heartwarming. And she's like, bull-headed glove, stubborn shoe. And Severn laughs, but then he ruins it by saying, start wearing that diamond necklace. And I just got, ugh. And when Enrique was talking about the hardships of growing up biracial, being neither accepted into one world or the other, it was just hard to read because being Chinese American, growing up with my ethnic Chinese roots and then living in America for most of my life, it was just, there's always been this disconnect between cultures. And I have biracial friends who tell me the same thing, being it's hard being accepted into either parts of their families completely because you're a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it's just, I related with Enrique so very well in this, and it's just, there will always be like a cultural disconnect. But one day, hopefully, in this very diverse and mixed world, we can have everybody, learn to have their arms open, welcome anybody regardless of anything, really. So let's work for it. Our new generation of people, we can do it. Come on. The fact about burying treasures with live guardians was so intriguing to me. Although I felt like I knew that, but I didn't. It was like a weird part in my history classes that I just don't know if I remember correctly. That's cool, albeit very cruel and harsh, but it is, I guess, how things were done back then, especially with rich people and high-ranking people. And when we first meet Ruslan, is that how you pronounce his name? When we first meet Ruslan, I liked him so much. He was so funny, so charming, so chivalrous, and I loved it every time he said, oh, your hair is so soft, you have such nice hair, look at mine, I don't have any, like that kind of thing. He's like complimenting somebody's hair one moment, and the next, if his guards fail, he's just like, go, you don't deserve your hair. I loved that aspect of his personality, but who knew? Okay. When we first meet Eva, and she says to Layla, what are you doing here? Are you like the secretary? And I, sweat. It's like that emoji. I cannot believe she said that to Layla. I was so nervous about what everybody's reaction would be. And you can see it's so you can see Enrique's protective self coming out, and then Hypnos and Severn'S sucking in a breath. And this scene is made all the funnier because it's based in Zophia's perspective. We see Zophia thinking about her saltpeter. Is that what it's called? Saltpeter? And then the next moment she's like, oh, yeah, that's going on with Layla over there and Eva. And they're saying that. Cool. But I'm out of saltpeter. And it was just so funny to read. And here I started instantly disliking Eva. How dare you insult Layla like that? She is not their secretary. And at the end of this part, we see Eva full on CPRing Severn. And I just didn't understand. Was the ice lodged in his throat or something that he couldn't breathe? I couldn't really understand what was happening here. But I had this thing where we knew that she's a blood forger, right? So I was like, can blood forging make someone fall in love? And I was so worried if that was the premise of how the rest of the story was going to go. I was so not into it. Please, no Eva. Eva cannot be with Severn. It's always going to be Layla and Severn. Layla and Severn. And we're at part 3. When he's healing, Severn says, if you want my hands on you, Layla, you'll have to do it yourself. If you want me to rip my clothes off, you should have just asked. That's what I thought. Any Mortal Instruments fans here? We're crossing fandoms now, if you didn't notice. When Hypnos just wanted to help Severn, Severn goes and says, I only had one brother, Hypnos. I'm not looking for a replacement. I was like, gosh, Severn, that was so cold. Stop treating Hypnos like that. He literally just wants to help you. Stop. There's going to be an area of redemption for many people in this world, unless you've done something absolutely horrible. But Hypnos didn't do... He turned his back on you when you were little, but come on, he was also a child then. Don't blame something a child did. Also, when we see the metal Leviathan, all I thought about was Atlantis, if anybody's seen that movie. It's such an underrated movie, but it's so good. Atlantis, we see the metal Leviathan, and then the phosphorus pendant that Zofia has. I thought of like that, you know, their necklace thingy that goes everywhere. Ugh, so nice. So I could picture it. Okay, also, Layla's dad gave her a dagger to cut out her own heart. That's not okay. That's really harsh. And I feel so bad for how Layla was treated growing up by her father, because she's so in pain after the loss of her mother but still, I can't. That was hard. Okay, the part where nobody wanted to listen to Enrique about the dead girls being the key to finding the treasure, I don't understand why. Even Hypnos blew him off. They thought they had other things that were more important at the moment, but guys, just give Enrique 2 minutes to explain himself. I didn't understand why they just literally cut him off every time. I was frustrated for Enrique. And I did not know Layla and Majnun, is that how you pronounce it? Majnun was already a poem, and it was a tragedy? And when Layla's explaining her nickname for Severin Majnun to him, and that almost kiss on the neck, and that whole conversation where they're looking in the mirror, I just wanted to press their heads together, and it was so frustrating. And Severin always backs away first. Oh, the angst. It's such a slow burn, and it's so well drawn out. Eva also seems oddly opposed to opening the test cats, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's in my nose. I just can't, in my mind, I can't process if it related to the end or anything. I'm not sure if that's important, but then we have her whole betrayal thing. And then so Enrique's Hercules moment where he tries to like lift Eva up and take her to safety, and then he drops her. He says, I'm weak, help Sophia. Enrique, he's such an adorable ball of fluff, and I love Enrique so much. We all love a man who can admit to his weaknesses and shortcomings. Good job. Eva was so close to redeeming herself at this point in the book, when she saved Enrique and then let the guards take the broken stag to the prison cell instead of just outright killing it or burning it or whatever. She was so close to redemption for me. Here, so close, but no cigar. Enrique's, I didn't scream, I yell-breathed. It's different, okay? During their little dinner party, when Hypnos is playing the piano again, Eva says, do you take requests, monsieur? And he said, yes. Eva says, excellent. Then stop. And then we are on to part 4, leading us all to believe that Layla was the lost bloodline, and that's why she can see things and blah, 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 blah. But wow, what nice diversion, what nice misleading, because that's not how it was. Then when Enrique says that he couldn't live without Layla giving him food to eat, and a life without cake is no life at all, it was just, so sweet. At one point when she wrote, like, Enrique squeaked, I couldn't help but imagine Enrique as Midoriya from My Hero Academia, if anybody watches that one too. His personality is kind of like that kind of quirkiness, you know? And when they're going through the Fallen House's treasures, Enrique is just like, I believe we should search the treasures before everything else. And then Zofia says, how did you come to that conclusion? And he responds, oh, you know, superstitions, stories, a gut instinct. That's exactly what he said the first time she asked that in the first book during their first interaction, and I remember it, and it was just, so cute. So thank God for Zofia wanting to involve Hypnos to help her with their plan, because everybody else was just rejecting him, and he felt like he didn't belong, but he does. You know, Hypnos just wants to help you guys, just let him help. I don't understand. And then so thank you, Zofia, for finally telling him, you know, you're drunk, create a distraction. Delay the midnight auction, and he did, and he was so useful for everybody up until the point where, you know, they get betrayed. Zofia says that in our reality, light belongs to an electromagnetic spectrum where we can see visible light. But then there are the lights we cannot see. The light we cannot see is the light emanating from other people, our friends, our loved ones. That's the light that she holds dear to her heart. And that was so cute. And it was very well written, this part. Yes, we have to realize that all of our loved ones and all of our friends and family and everybody else, they give us light and we don't see it, and something we should embrace. All the light we cannot see. I've been meaning to read that book and I haven't been able to. When Zofia gets ambushed and the line ends with, "My dear," I immediately thought of Ruslan. I was so hoping it wouldn't be. I wrote here, I don't want it to be Ruslan, but who else would call her my dear? I hoped it was just Eva, but I liked Ruslan, I did. We liked him. He was so charming and witty and funny and gentlemanly, and he's just a nice, quirky character, and When we find out that Severn was the one who paid off the Illustrados to not come to Enrique's little meeting in Paris, I was just angry at Severn. I was like, why would you do that? Yes, I know you need him for your next acquisition, but do you think Enrique would reject you even if he was accepted into the Illustrados? He'll still finish the acquisition with you. Why, Severn? Was it to save Enrique the pain in the case that he didn't get accepted? I don't know. I was angry at Severn. We finally figure out that it's not the divine lyrics, but the divine lyre, which is this thing. And I'm like, man, this is all about music. And I was so happy that we had the music of the spheres in there, the divine lyrics, but turned out to be the lyre. And it's all connected to music. And it just made me think about the Donald Duck thing. As a music student, I was so happy. And whenever in movies or books or TV, when we see a character on the brink of death or know that death is coming, they're all like, let's do everything that I can in the moment that we have right now. I'm gonna live out every day like it's our last, and we're gonna enjoy it to the fullest. And that's what Layla's kind of mindset was. And I was just like, you go, girl. You know what? You get it. Stop looking at your ring. Just live, And I was just like, why don't you just push Severn in a room and just lock the door, okay? Just do it. I can't. The tension. And when we find out about blood forging, we realize that to consume a drop of one's own blood allows you to submit to your innermost desires, right? But a drop of another's blood, and you could even wear their face for an hour. That's so scary. Oh my God. What? No wonder why. It should be outlawed. Just like blood bending was outlawed. Blood forging should be outlawed.
Did I say blood forging? Blood forging! Not blood bending. Blood forging!
So we knew that Eva was up to something when she pricked Layla in the neck, and man, I wrote awful in big letters saying, this is the last straw. I don't like Eva. Eva, you've lost all redemption for me unless you do something crazy. Which I predict in the last book, Eva will have sacrificed herself for the good of their group. Because she doesn't seem like she genuinely is evil. She just is misled and misguided. Although I don't like her personality. Selfish and jealous and conceited, and I just, And when we see Eva there with Severn dressed as Layla, I wanted to punch her where it hurts. I wrote, yes, Layla, stick her. And finally, we get to where Severn and Layla get together. Finally. And we finally got there, and it paid off. The slow burn was so worth it. And when they woke up, I did write, what about the midnight auction? They've just left that. And then we realized, obviously, the midnight auction is indefinitely postponed. And yes, I knew that Eva had to be related to the Vasilyev's dead ballerina girlfriend because of her red hair as she was introduced. It's awful what happened to her, but that does not mean you get to push your anger and your need for revenge onto other people. It does not exemplify you to do that. So thank the maker for finally having Enrique tell Severn, as somebody was bound to do, about Layla and her impending death. Somebody should have told Severn. Layla, you should have told Severn. And Severn just couldn't say anything. I couldn't really gauge his reaction to it because the next moment animals started attacking, right? And when Zofia comes out of the prison cell with her dear automaton, something, it was so cute, but it was so epic, and it reminded me of Aelin when she rode out into the forest on her stag. And if anybody knows what I'm talking about, Throne of Glass fans, it was so epic, Zofia with the sword and all, and it's coming to the guys' rescue. So Ruslan is the doctor, although I didn't want him to be. I just liked him. I wished he was a good guy, but alas, he was not. And then when Ruslan says, make sure everybody in the order is counted for, you know, and maybe slap them with this, and he holds up the dead patriarch's hand, and I was just like, ew, it's disgusting. It's not funny, and I don't know why I'm laughing, but it's so mad scientist-like of him. I guess that's why he's called the doctor. And Enrique's ear. He sliced off Enrique's ear. Now I have no idea what to say. Poor Enrique. When we find out that the Lost Muses bloodline runs in Severn'S veins, I just wrote a big. Even though in the beginning I did say, is Severn part of the Lost Muses bloodline? I just don't think it occurred to me because we were misled that it was Layla. But then, so does the Lost Muses bloodline overpower that of his House Vanth bloodline? Or is he not House Vanth's son? I'm not quite understanding what's going on here. Does it just... So he can't be both the House heir and the Lost Muses bloodline? Was that explained? I'm not sure. Somebody tell me. I wasn't quite sure what Severn was planning when he stepped up to kill his friends. And, you know, Layla, when she thought that Severn had given up on her and given up on everybody, it was just so hard to watch. And I wish he didn't have to do that, but he did. And he used Tristan's Goliath poison, which we knew he would use at some point because he kept on, it was mentioned so many times throughout the book that he kept on twirling the knife in his hands with the paralyzing Goliath poison, spider venom, tarantula venom. I'm impressed by Severn's sleight of hand. That was cool though. And here I was like, roll credits where Layla says that hope is nothing more than a silvered serpent. But when Layla threw the Nemo bug, is that what it's called? Nemo bug? I don't know how to pronounce that. Layla, when you threw it into the snow and just completely exploded it, did you not want to give it a chance? Give it at least one chance for Severn to explain himself. You could have. He left you alive. I hope that's there. He did leave you alive. And Zofia and Enrique aren't dead either. They're just out for the moment. But I guess I understand where she's coming from, thinking that all her friends just died and Severn turned their back on them and now she's just all alone. But that's not the case. Severn has a plan. In Severn's perspective, when he says Tristan's love had worn the face of horror, Delphine's love had worn the face of hate, Kahina's love had worn the face of silence, and I wrote, and Severn's love wears the face of death. Yes, I was wondering where the blood was coming from, and then we realized it's the raspberry cherry jam. And I was like, do you mean to tell me that they can't smell the blood is sweet? Maybe they make it differently than the jam we have nowadays. Those are really sweet. And I guess I understand why the matriarch had to sacrifice herself because she didn't want the order or anybody else getting their hands on any of the information and to buy everybody else some time. But that was just, it was rather sudden and unexpected, and I wish there was another way that it could have played out. She could have gone into hiding, or I don't know. Can they track them? I don't know. I just wasn't. And the last sentence of the epilogue ends with, but for the next 2 minutes, Hypnos had no choice but to wait. And here we are. And I wrote, yeah, and we need to wait for like 2 more years for the next book. Heart. But I am so excited after reading this book. I want to know what happens next. I want to know what everybody's reaction will be when they figure out, oh yeah, this was part of a plan. And Hypnos comes to explain to them, no, Severn didn't betray you guys. We have a plan. We just need to figure out how to execute it well. So definitely a 5-star book for me. I really liked everything that happened and how everything played out. I was hoping things happened differently with Ruslan though, just because I liked his character. But I mean, I guess now he's a villain and he's disturbing and he cuts off people's limbs and stuff, and I don't know, it's disturbing. But I really enjoyed this book. Please let me know what you guys thought of the book in the comments down below, and let me see how excited you guys are for the next book in the series, because I am freaking hyped. And I'm going to reread through my notes when the next book comes out. Hopefully next year, maybe 2 years. We don't know what the situation is. But thank you so much, Wednesday Books, and thank you, Roshni Chokshi, for this wonderful next installment. And I hope to read so many more of your amazing works. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys next time. Hopefully soon when I do this again. Bye!